Hi, welcome to Books and Bocadillos. My name is Mariandrea, and welcome back to Thursday Night Poetry. This is the second week that I am trying to do this Thursday poetry reading thing here on BookTube. And I have been inspired by Taylor Swift's new album, The Tortured Poets Department, to focus on reading poetry from my favorite tortured poets in the month of May. So this week, I have two that I want to talk about, and I want to read a few poems by these poets. The first one is Emily Bronte. This is the Penguin Classics, The Complete Poems by Emily Bronte. My experience with Emily Bronte is Wuthering Heights. I'm still rereading it for the third time, and I'm having more success with it now that I'm reading it as horror. And I love Emily Bronte's poems. They are dark and broody and sad and moody and dark and reflective and dramatic. So the poem I want to read is from, I think it's the dated poems, or yep, section 2, dated poems, and this is number 40. What use is it to slumber here, though the heart be sad and weary? What use is it to slumber here, though the day rise dark and dreary? For that mist may break when the sun is high, and this soul forget its sorrow, and the rosy ray of the closing day may promise a brighter morrow. I have to read this again because I love it so much. Number 40. What use is it to slumber here, though the heart be sad and weary? What use is it to slumber here, though the day rise dark and dreary? For that mist may break when the sun is high, and this soul forget its sorrow, and the rosy ray of the closing day may promise a brighter morrow. That was poem number 40 by Emily Bronte. This is The Philosopher by Emily Bronte. Enough of thought, philosopher, too long hast thou been dreaming, unenlightened in this chamber drear, while summer's sun is beaming. Space-sweeping soul, what sad refrain concludes thy musings once again? Oh, for the time when I shall sleep without identity, and never care how rain may steep or snow may cover me. No promised heaven these wild desires could all or half fulfill. No threatened hell with quenchless fires subdue this quenchless will. So said I, and still say the same, still to my death will say, three gods within this little frame are warring night and day. Heaven cannot hold them all, and yet they all are held in me, and must be mine till I forget my present entity. Oh, for this time when in my breast their struggles will be o'er. Oh, and for the day when I shall rest and never suffer more. I saw a spirit standing, man, where thou doth stand an hour ago, and round his feet three rivers ran, of equal depth and equal flow. A golden stream, and one like blood, and one like sapphire seemed to be. But where they joined their triple flood, it tumbled to an inky sea. The spirit sent his dazzling gaze down through the ocean's gloomy night, then kindling all with sudden blaze, the glad deep sparkled wide and bright, white as the sun, far, far more fair than its divided sources were. And even for that spirit seer, I've watched and sought my lifetime long, sought him in heaven, hell, earth, and air, an endless search, and always wrong. Had I but seen his glorious eye once, light the clouds that wilder me. I ne'er had raised this coward cry to cease to think and cease to be. I ne'er had oblivion blessed, nor stretching eager hands to death implored to change for senseless rest the sentient soul, this living breath. Oh, let me die that power and will their cruel strife may close, and conquered good and conquering ill be lost in one repose. This was The Philosopher by Emily Bronte. And speaking of philosophers, I think poets are philosophers, but I'm not sure that all philosophers are poets. So my thinking is all poets are philosophers, but are all philosophers poets? What do you think about that? I'd be interested in your thoughts. Leave them in the comments. So speaking of philosophers, one of my favorite philosophers, modern day philosophers, is Mariana Alessandri. I love her writing, and this is her nonfiction. It's mostly essays. It's titled Night Vision, and the subtitle says Seeing Ourselves Through Dark Moods. So she explores dark moods through philosophical thinking. And when I was thinking about poets and tortured poets, I came to this book, not because this is not a poetry book, this is a book about philosophy and seeing mental health and seeing dark moods through a philosophical lens and a cultural lens, particularly for minorities, people of color. So I came to this collection because I was sure I would find a poem in here. And this book is sectioned by a dark mood. So there's depression, there's anxiety, there's fear. In the depression section, I came across this poem by one of my favorite thinkers. She's now deceased, but she is, for me, like a modern classical thinker, writer, philosopher, poet, storyteller, and this is Gloria Anzaldua. And Mariana Alessandri talks about Gloria Anzaldua's life, and Gloria Anzaldua's grappling with depression and her mental health. And she includes this poem that Gloria Anzaldua wrote. So I'm going to read a part of it, and then talk a little bit about it. So this is chapter 4, titled Recoloring Depression in Mariana Alessandri's Night Vision. I'm reading off of page 112. In 2002, Anzaldua emailed a poem about her depression to Keating. The poem, titled Healing Wounds, reveals her state of mind as the dirty dishes continue to pile up. This is a poem. I have been ripped wide open by a word, a look, a gesture. From self, kin, and stranger, my soul jumps out, scurries into hiding. I hobble here and there, seeking solace, trying to coax it back home. But the me that's home has become an alien without it. Wailing, I pull my hair, suck snot back and swallow it. Place both hands over the wound, but after all these years, it still bleeds. Mariana Alessandri writes, Anzaldua spent a lot of her time in darkness. As her poem recounts, she bled, she wailed, she pulled her hair, she tried to find solace, but often found anguish instead. I'm going to continue reading because this is where I'm going to tie this with the Emily Bronte poem. Excuse me. Despite how painful Anzaldua's depression was, she did not call it a disorder, a disease, or an illness. Instead, she invented her own term for it. The Chicana artist took a subject as drab as clinical depression and made a colorful myth out of it. That sounds very poetic to me. Um, so Mariana Alessandri goes on to talk about how Gloria Anzaldua created this mythical world out of her depression, and in this creating a myth or creating this lens of depression in a way that wasn't self-shaming but was more like empowering in a sense, or more like um, more hers than a label. Like it was more something that she had um, agency over, and not a label that is slapped onto her as an illness or something that is wrong. It is more a part of her being, her day to day. Maybe brought a little bit of validation, normalization to her life. Um, she talks about how Anzaldua created this story. Like Gloria Anzaldua was a great storyteller, and she created this story based on the I think it was the Aztec mythology. Yes. Um, so she used Aztec mythology to create this characterization of depression, to where she's warring with this mythical creature that is depression, and how this, with this warring with this mythical creature, with this characterization, how it embodies her, how it is within her, how it is part of her lived experience. I do want to encourage you to pick up this book if you are into. This is a great book for like mental health May. If you are into philosophy, it's an alternative way to look at dark moods, rather than through the clinical lens. I'm going to read this section to try to explain Gloria Anzaldua's process as told through Mariana Alessandri's account or writing. By the light of the moon, depression looked to Anzaldua a lot like the Aztec goddess who swallows us whole and plunges us into darkness, but who gives us a new way to see. How often do we give credit to the moon or even darkness itself for insights? In Aztec iconography, Coatlicue's head is made up of two rattlesnakes facing each other. They symbolize the giving and taking of life because Coatlicue does both. She is both a womb and a consuming internal whirlwind, the symbol of the underground aspects of the psyche. Coatlicue is not kind, she is harsh, but Anzaldua was used to harshness. Her sister tore up Borderlands La Frontera, the new mestiza, and threw it into the garbage can, refusing to talk to her for 3 years. Her mother made her feel lazy and freakish, but they also loved her, so it did not surprise Anzaldua that her spiritual mother, Coatlicue, would catapult her into a depression multiple times over her lifetime. Anzaldua wrote that when pain, suffering, and the advent of death become intolerable, Coatlicue will open and plunge us into its maw, devour us. Anzaldua's goddess mother grabbed hold of her and did not let go. When she found herself in Coatlicue's stomach, Anzaldua realized that it was best to stay still. Deep thinking, or what she called the germination work, takes place in the deep, dark earth of the unconscious. In the arms of Coatlicue, hidden ideas begin to surface, the unconscious mind begins to reveal itself. I'm going to leave it there. Mariana Alessandri goes into a lot of detail about the use of myth and philosophy to grapple with depression as written and accounted by Gloria Anzaldua's lived experiences. Gloria Anzaldua takes this mythical character or creature, Cuatlicue, and it reminds me of, in this poem, the philosopher Emily Bronte writes about three gods within this little frame are warring night and day. So Emily Bronte is also experiencing an internal battle, and Emily Bronte is also personifying the emotions, the war within, and characterizing them, saying three gods within this little frame. So Gloria Anzaldua is taking Aztec mythology and thinking about like the gods in Aztec mythology, the gods and goddesses, and how they are inflicting these warlike moods inside of her. And Emily Bronte, in her own experience and culture, is saying there are three gods within this little frame that are at war night and day. And it's like two different tortured poets, right? Two different poets, two different thinkers, two different storytellers experiencing these dark moods, these internal battles, and then applying mythology to the experience to grapple with what is happening inside and in here and in their body, like that feeling of being at war with yourself or within yourself. I think that's what feeling torture, like the idea, the concept of a tortured poet, like the war, the turmoil internally, and how we grapple with those thoughts and those emotions and express those as poets, how those thoughts and those emotions get expressed through poetry, whether it be through the writing of a poem or through the making of something creative, whether it be art or whether it be in the kitchen, something practical, the doing, the making, the creating. So those are my thoughts for tonight. Emily Bronte, the complete poems. Highly, highly, highly recommend Mariana Alessandri's work. This is her book, Night Vision. Love her writing, love her thinking. Gloria Anzaldua is a great poet and storyteller and writer to feature, and I love that she did. So Gloria Anzaldua, her most popular work is Borderlands, The New Mestiza, and yeah, I love her work talking about the Chicana experience. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any thoughts on what I've shared, and let me know if you think, what you think. Are all poets philosophers? And are all philosophers poets? Let's talk about that in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Hasta la próxima.